I'm just all right. So yeah, I will just give it another let's call it 15 seconds and then we can rock and roll. Um all
All right.
right. Um All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Code for Boston conversation. Very excited to welcome Anu, who is the founder and I think sole developer of Local TV Plus, which is a service that he will talk about that he's been working on and is in fact broadly available to allow you to watch local TV in the Boston area. So, welcome, Anu. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So,
So,
I know you've got maybe a few slides, a little bit of background. So let's just start with where did you get the idea for local TV plus?
so oddly enough, the idea is not originally mine. If you've ever watched TV on the internet, you know there was a service called Locast about 5 or 6 years ago. It got sued into oblivion because while they technically operated like a nonprofit, they didn't really, and eventually had to shut down. So once I realized somebody was doing this, dug into the law and realized, wait, that the law actually says you can just rebroadcast TV for free. Oh, or not, it doesn't even have to be for free, but you can rebroadcast TV as a nonprofit, and the law pretty clearly says you can. And then based on the court stuff, I realized there's certain parameters I have to operate under. But yeah, pretty much, I had done TV stuff for my own personal use at home out of convenience. So eventually, it grew out of me making that more and more public, and making a nonprofit to actually operate all of it.
Yeah. Now, I'm just curious, did you like when you were starting to build this, did you consult a lawyer or like are you a lawyer or have like a friend that's a lawyer that kind of helped you figure this out? Or how did you kind of, go through and I guess both come to the conclusions you came to and then also spin up your own nonprofit, which seems like it would be a non-trivial thing to do.
Yeah, I think spinning up a nonprofit was the most complicated and expensive part of the whole thing. No, I'm not a lawyer. I just followed the previous case and stuff as it happened, and like, oh, the parameters they established in that case said certain things could be done, and most of it had to do with the financial part of operations, not the actual streaming of the TV itself. And then eventually, I think you suggested I get in touch with Harvard Cyber Law Clinic and work with them quite a bit and set up, what guidelines sort of as to how we should operate to stay within the bounds of law as they understood it, and set up terms of service, privacy policy, and stuff like that. And yeah, so not a lawyer. Anything I say is not legal advice, but as far as I understand it, this is legal.
Oh, that's good. That's really, the Harvard Law School, just, that cyber law clinic, such a good resource for folks in Boston, especially, if you are a nonprofit or that sort of thing. And I guess, kind of the next thing we'd be interested in learning about is how did you like sort of build like V1? What did was like the prototype or MVP look like?
So yeah, I mean, I make iPhone apps, or I did, and so I'm pretty familiar with churning out an app pretty quickly. For the most part, this is running on a stack of open source software. So the TV tuning part is a Linux app called TV Headend, and the video encoding is just FFmpeg. So it was once you figure out how to run the commands, it was actually pretty straightforward. V1 looked pretty close to what it is now. It hasn't actually changed much. It's still running on all the original old leftover hardware and stuff like that. I have pictures in the slide deck for people curious of what it's been running on. So it's just old enterprise junk. that are very easily acquired and very, very inexpensive. Um, yeah, it doesn't need a lot of resources to actually run, and that's one of the ways we're able to operate as a nonprofit and put it out for free because the cost to serve is generally kept low.
Yeah. Did you have to spend like a lot of time actually writing the code? Like how much when you're going through and piecing together the different components and sitting down coding, was it like midnight and you were chugging Monster energy drinks? Like what's kind of the scene here?
It's even funnier because I was like, I think I had COVID at the time, the very first time, and could not go to work, couldn't really do work, and my kids were going bananas, and we're all in isolation. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take this existing service that I have that I was running in my own house, so that I could watch, basically, so I could watch TV from an antenna upstairs on my Apple TV downstairs, right? And that's essentially what it started off as. And like, oh well, I'll build a REST interface around it to let the Apple TV do more things and more things. And eventually, I'll transcode it and have it actually be a native format for the Apple TV. And then that became, oh, well, okay, this can actually run and I can handle more than one viewer on this. Oh, okay, then how do I scale this? Yeah, I think the greater complexity is not the application itself, which is just a pretty bog standard Spring Boot application. It's the sort of all the services that sort of come together that actually build a bigger picture than what it actually is. Like it's more than the sum of it all the parts that actually makes it more complex than the individual components themselves, which are not particularly elaborate.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. And so, you're sitting together, you cobble. It sounds like, your very first users were you and your kids and your family. Who came next? Who was, when did you decide, how did you decide to like start to roll this thing out?
It was actually it's largely grown on Reddit. So I just go to I have a subreddit for from the local TV plus that you can see. But uh, I went to Reddit and I asked people for help. In particular, like a lot of people watch the Patriots games, and that was like so. Usually, I've been like, okay, so I'll start. I think like 2 years ago, I started actually. The nonprofit existed, and this could be publicly accessible. So we did like a stress test, and some people watched the game, and it worked fine. And then we got to Thanksgiving, and everybody was watching the game all day, and it just completely melted down. It was awful, right? But it was like, while it was terrible, it was a really good beta test because it pushed it to its limits, and I could actually see where the particular bottlenecks for scalability were. Things I expected to be bottlenecks were not bottlenecks. Other places that I didn't anticipate at all, like hard drive versus SSD, could be a bottleneck, right? I switched to not using hard drives at all and using RAM disks everywhere possible. It's a very naive mistake. In retrospect, it makes complete sense. You want to keep everything in memory and like stuff like that. But it was like a lot of testing with, and it's difficult to actually test something like this in scale
Mhm.
because, I can only generate so much organic traffic myself or synthetic traffic. I'd need a pretty good rig to do the kind of scaling synthetic traffic, and I can do the math to see how things might scale up. But no, I actually had to like get more people like more diverse scenarios. Like they had issues sometimes like it was working okay on mobile but wasn't properly. I think it was like what? There's one time I had a problem where like the audio encoding was not done properly, so like it was people having problem on mobile in particular. Strange things like that. The more people tested it in more different scenarios, with each bug report and each issue report is like iterating and getting better and better. So like when you look at it where it started 2 years ago on Thanksgiving and where it is now, like it's a huge delta of improvement.
Wow. Now, are people sending you this feedback? Are they emailing you? What's sort of like the channels that comes through, and how do you like triage and prioritize that?
I mean, I think it's primarily three different channels. One is in the app itself. There's a link that says contact support or contact the developer, something like that. And that's an email one. That's the easiest one to do. There's also a link to submit a bug report, and that goes to GitHub. We have a public issue tracker on GitHub where people submit feature requests and or issues and stuff like that. So people who usually submit on GitHub are usually more technically inclined. People use email, not so much. And then there's Reddit, where there's a subreddit where several hundred people are hanging out there and usually post very quickly if there's a problem. Um, so yeah, they basically function as QA testers. A lot of those people are in the beta channel. So I have like, different tiers when I do a release. So there's like the beta release that happens, and I let it cook in the beta release for a little bit before making it generally available as a public beta or, production release. So usually if something egregious happens, it gets caught there.
Oh wow, that's great. And do those folks, do they like volunteer to like help in any way, or folks like do you have other people like coding on it, or are they really just like testing? Like how are you kind of leveraging the community?
I mean, I've done all the coding and all the designing and development. It's more or less been me. I have a couple of collaborators actually out of New York City who did a lot of the business side of things. So handling, setting up the nonprofit, filing taxes because you have to file taxes, letters, financial issues like that they deal with. A person who does the design part because I'm not a designer. I don't pretend to be. I write code. Um, so they do that. Otherwise, I do the coding, and yeah, for the most part, the public has been testing. There's not a lot of coding that's happening anymore because it's reached a point where, at least for iOS and Android, it's functional, and then I just need to test and find bugs, and it's like squashing bugs, and especially in the case of Android, compatibility testing. So trying to get as wide, I mean, that's probably the most useful thing. Trying to get as wide a variety of different devices to get tested on because it'll come like it works on my Samsung running Android this, and like it doesn't work on this one running Android something else. And it's like one particular quirk in the way that it exposes certain settings made it not work on that device. But yeah, having in the case of Android especially, having a wide variety of testers has made it significantly easier.
Oh, that's so cool. And it seems like you have a community, and at least from what I've seen, there isn't any sort of like actual required fee to use the service, which seems extremely generous, at least to me. And so, kind of curious, are folks or a lot of folks choosing to make a voluntary donation? Are there like some folks making like kind of larger donations to cover the costs? How does I guess that level of support break down?
Yeah, a lot of people are donating. People donate again. It's entirely optional. You can donate zero and continue using it, and never pay anything at all. Because if you can't, you can't, right? And that's how it should be.
Yeah.
Some people who can are, and certainly people who donate. Some people might donate like $100. Some people might donate $5 or $1. It's been the whole range of it. I go on the assumption that anybody who can will, and if you can't, then it's fine. It's enough to cover the cost for now. And I think I was mentioning too, there's about 11,000 users as of this morning running on the service. Generally, when the service peaks, there's about 800. Usually during a football game or during football, on Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoons, there's about 800 or so people watching. And so we'll have like a pretty big spike in traffic at that time. And then during the week, it sort of tapers off, almost nothing during the day, and then spikes again around prime time. Um, yeah, for the most part, the donations right now cover it. I mean, our cost of operations are fairly low. It's a total cost of about $300 a month, and the donations cover that. We'll see as things scale up and as there are more users. But for now, it seems to be okay.
Oh, that's great to hear. Have you ever had interest, like has anyone come from like a foundation or other nonprofits and been like, hey, this is really great. Like I'd love to like support it with a grant, or is that have you kind of considered looking into those sorts of things to try and grow it at all?
I have not. We got to be careful with that. Just need to make sure that whoever is giving me money doesn't have any kind of financial interest in this or at
Hmm.
all with a competitor. So, like for example, I will not take any money from a cable company or from AT&T or something like that, or anybody involved in any form of possible competition, because I do not want anything to do I have nothing to do with any of them, and I don't want anything to do with them. So individual donors, yeah, people do corporate donation matching, so that's fine as well. Yeah, but I have not done any. I'm always open to suggestions if people know about foundations and stuff like that that are doing grants, as long as there isn't some kind of conflict of interest there. Yeah, always welcome advice on that.
Yeah, if you were to say you had any sorts of like big dreams or plans for this in 2026, what's I guess kind of on the roadmap or in your, kind of big vision of things you might want to do or see with it over the next year?
I think for the most part, it's going to be growing the existing user base. I mean, the Android, so iOS app launched in January, so like after a year of testing, and like in the summer, started with the Android app and the Android TV app. Need to refine it further and make it more reliable and resolve some of the issues with device compatibility. Maybe in the future, like a Roku app, I think it's often sought after, but it really depends on whether it's even technically possible. And just I know the Roku has like more of a web-based SDK, but it's something to investigate. I'm not familiar with it, and again, if anybody knows anything about that, that's always welcome. Yeah, and then after that, it's going to be trying to build more awareness. So one of the things I'm thinking of doing is I have working on flyers that we can put at public libraries or cafes and stuff like that with a QR code. So scan this, you get access to free television. Um, Probably that, growing the existing user base and seeing the level of what things scale. Generally in our service area, there's about possible around, that's all of Massachusetts, probably edges of New England, so several million people who can theory download and use the app because nearly everybody has an iOS or Android device. Um, yeah, trying to figure out what the limits of the current architecture are for scaling. It's probably what it is.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I recall you mentioned in one of your blog posts that you leaned heavily on AI when you were going to build the Android app. And so I was wondering if you could kind of describe like what did that process look like, and maybe what were some of the tools that you used to take the existing app and translate it into the Android platform.
Yeah, so I used Android very, very. I don't use Android. I've really never owned an Android device. Last time I wrote an Android app was before the iPhone launched. Android looked like a BlackBerry, uh, so I'm not very familiar with it. But I am a Java developer, so I am familiar with Java, which is the language that Android software is written in. And what I did was I did two parts of it. One is most of the application is defined using Open API, like a schema definition. So you could use that as a tool to automatically generate clients, like in seconds. Target this platform, it spits out client libraries. So I spit out a client library for my server for Java, which worked for Android. And then I gave this was Cursor running Claude, right? I forget even which version of it was, pretty old. A Cursor running Claude, screenshots of the iOS app, and sort of guided it into generating the UI for the Android app, and then telling it which API calls certain buttons make, and what data structure should load up in what way. And yeah, I think I spent about a total like actual time because I was using the Claude free tier to try it out too, so it wasn't even very much. I probably spent a total of 5 hours over the course of a few days generating the Android client. And yeah, that's the client that's there now. I generated the Android, the phone and tablet client, and then after that actually remarkably worked. I went back into Claude, and then I said, generate a TV app from this, and it went through and it grepped everything and made the changes that I need to make, and then generated a TV application. Probably would have
Yeah.
taken me, to learn it myself and do it for a very long time. It probably would have taken. In fact, I like to joke that it's a junior engineer named AI. Claude is my junior engineer there. So a lot of it was, it was never necessarily always correct. So it did require reviewing, which is when I said 5 hours, like it was code reviewing. but it helped to know what the prompt is going to be. Like, I want this button to do this, making this API call. So it was almost like programming in pseudocode. Um, I don't know the target language that I was working with, which is Android's APIs, but I knew what it should do, so I could focus less on how I was going to do something and what it was going to do. Surprisingly,
Wow.
worked very, very well.
Did this feel like an unlock? Like, oh, okay, if I could code in this, then like maybe
Yeah,
I could start coding in other languages besides that as well with the AI? Is that kind of the sense you
yeah,
started to get?
probably. Yeah, yeah. I mean, in this case, it worked because I already knew Java, so I could review what it was doing. Uh, it would be more of a problem if it was like a language I didn't know. Then that enters into the realm of vibe coding. This is more of like I'm pairing with the AI. And conversely, like when I'm writing other code now, I go and let the AI take a look at it and see if it catches any bugs in my existing code. Um, as part of the pair, like, okay, so do you see any issues with this code I wrote? And they'll go through and make suggestions, and some of them they're really good, and some of them it's garbage. But you need to be able, it's like with any kind of code review that you're doing, you need to be able to actually take it as feedback. Um, Generally, it's become a really good tool, and I use it more and more now in my daily life. And it's wild because it's something that was non-existent last year. Like last year, at most, I might
Mhm.
have been writing unit tests with it. Like and the models weren't very good for doing stuff like that, but the models have improved immensely. Um, and there's enough free tiers that you can
Yeah.
try one of these clients, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
Definitely
Do
a
you
worst
have
multiplier.
a favorite model you're using right now? Do you like the Chat GPT versus the Anthropics or?
I use Claude. Claude is very good. Claude Code, which is like the new thing they came out with, is amazing. I haven't had enough time to really dig into it as much as I have with. I mean, I use Cursor as the Visual Studio based IDE for AI development. It's probably one of the first really big ones. I use that, and I use Claude as the model on it. And for my purposes, it works pretty well. I haven't actually done anything with ChatGPT. I think at the point in time when I was doing this, Claude was generally considered to be the best, so I just went with that.
And has this kind of influenced your view on, like, as we're doing volunteer projects here at Code for Boston, we have a lot of people collaborating on code together. As a more senior engineer, if you had a junior, would you tend to push them more towards learning and using these tools, or do you think that they should maybe stay away from them to like learn the fundamentals first and then pick them up? Like, how does this kind of influence, I guess, your mentoring and how you would approach working with juniors?
I think you got to look at it as a tool like anything else. And generally, this is no, a lot of people have asked me this. Generally speaking, it's sort of like when I started writing code, it was a text editor at best, like in the 80s. And then we got like QBasic. You like QBasic was like a really nice UI on that came that shipped with MS DOS, and that was better than I was writing basic code as a kid. Then QBasic
Mm.
got better, and then we got like the beginnings of IDEs, and we got code completion, and then built-in debuggers, static analysis, and so forth, right? So like the tools keep improving. So this is just another tool. It's like one more thing that you can use, and like absolutely you have to use it. One of the reasons you have to use it is because if you don't use it, the other guy's using it, and so it'll be very difficult to compete with somebody who's using AI. I think the danger is to use it and let it just do it and not actually review what it's doing. So taking the human out of the loop is a bad idea. But actually just using it as a tool, it might as well be an IDE, right, or code completion. Because I remember when you had to remember every single method, every single function, and you have typos in your code and stuff like that. And the fact that you can just hit like dot and get completion on something, or click on something and look at the documentation while you're in your IDE is quite a luxury. And this is just another one of those.
Yeah, would you say that you actually enjoy like building the software more now that you have these tools available to you?
Yeah, certainly, there are times when I just want to test something, like, does this work or not? And I could spend all my time writing the code, or in a few minutes give my notes to the AI, let it spit out something and get a proof of concept like that. It's amazing,
Mhm.
right? So something like that, and like, oh, okay, well, this does not actually work, or you go from the design phase to the testing phase a lot faster. Like for example, today I was working on like I use H.264, which is
Mhm.
pretty old as my video encoding standard. So I was working on switching over to H.265 and working with a different packager and all these things I'm not familiar with, but I can also query the AI with like very specific queries, right? Like how do I do X, Y, Z in X? Look at this thing. What did I make a mistake with? Oh, you forgot this flag, or this is not formatted correctly, which if I were to do that myself would take me a very long time versus minutes. Like, so having the ability to ask effectively somebody to look over your shoulder and see if you're doing something right, and conversely ask you why you're doing what you're doing is kind of useful. Speeds things up.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I know you just mentioned kind of converting from like H.264 to H.265. Have you found it to be, I guess, like sort of esoteric to go in and try and learn about differences between encoding standards and what happens, or is this all like, if I'm new, this is pretty accessible? Like, what's kind of the learning curve as you've been, I guess, going into some of these depths here?
Yeah, I have no background in video encoding. This is not what I ever have ever done. So yeah, I could spend all my time, in particular, because I'm using hardware encoders and multiple different hardware encoders, and they all have their own peculiarities, as it turns out, right? So there's no like H.265 encoder. It's the NVIDIA hardware encoder. It's the Intel hardware encoder, or whatever, and they all work differently. So it would be very tedious to have to go and learn all that versus let me just ask the AI, okay, so I have this encoder. This is my thing currently on Intel. How do I convert this to the equivalent thing on NVIDIA's encoder? And then it gives me a matrix and say, okay, well, this command maps doesn't map to this. This doesn't exist on it but if I were to go do that, yeah, that's a waste of my time. Like, I don't need to do that. I could focus on something more important, right? Not getting this video encoding that I've already gotten working. Um, Similarly, does this command work, or is this even possible? Is another good one. That's a fun one because
Yeah.
I'll sometimes open multiple different AIs and have them sort of talk to each other and see if the answers I get from one compare to the other, and like that's where I often find errors. Like even in Claude, or actually a
Mhm.
good one was Gemini, which will insist like things exist that don't exist. Um, and they're like, I'll say, give me the documentation. Where's the reference? And like eventually it doesn't. Like gives me a link to a YouTube video. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, it was terrible, like a total waste of time. But then I opened up Claude and asked the same thing. Claude's like, that's not possible. That doesn't exist.
Yeah, so it sounds like, yeah, they all have sort of their different perspectives and limitations. I did want to just, since we've hit the half hour mark, just open to the room if folks have questions for new. Feel free to either put them in the chat and I can read them, or you can raise your hand if you want to, ask one on screen. And I'm happy to, take those questions as folks might have them, because, I want to make sure we have some time for community as well. So feel free to toss those out there. Otherwise, I mean, I'm more than happy to kind of go through my list as we do wait for those to pop up. Um, I think one thing that I wanted to make sure to ask about when we're going through things is can you talk a little bit more about I know there's this new thing called ATSC3 and there's some DRM
Yeah,
stuff coming up. Do you have any how is this going to impact you at all or the service? Like, are we in danger of like this is kind of going to be a moment in time? Like, what's going on with that?
yeah, that would effectively end free television. right? That's the end of TV as we know it. If you're not familiar, the FCC is currently talking about whether to continue to allow the broadcasters to switch the current broadcasting standard, which is called ATSC, to ATSC3. And ATSC3 has Google's wideband DRM built into the television signal. In many cases, it means that you also need to have an internet connection in order to watch broadcast TV. So, in the old days, you could have an antenna, you could get a picture, but now you may also have to buy an internet connection just to get the decryption key. Um, it's pretty awful. I have bought some ATSC3 devices to test it out. It's
Mhm.
not good at all for a variety of reasons, among the fact that it only works on Android and it will likely never work on anything else because it only uses Google tech. It needs the internet to watch TV. So, if there's a disaster or something like that, you will not be able. Granted, my service will not work either if there's no internet, but at least it's an internet-based service, right? But broadcast television, something that you should just be able to pick up, is not something that should be locked behind that. Yeah, I could. Yeah, if we were to switch off and they were to turn off the ATSC1 signal, it probably would be the end of this service. Yeah,
All
or
right.
anything like it.
Well, that's a little bit of a bummer there if that occurs. I have a question from
I'm hoping that
Thad.
it doesn't happen, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Thad wants to know, do you think the app format has interactive potential for small local TV channels? And I guess I'll just add on to that. How do you think about like potentially adding other video streams or services? Is that something you've thought about at all?
yeah, I mean, if there are other streams and things I could include, it's actually very easy to add another stream to the app. Yeah, so absolutely. If there are streams and things that we could include that make it more accessible to people, I think one of the fun things is the PBS link in the app is not my stream of PBS. It's linked to PBS's website or PBS's app because PBS provides a full stream already. There's no reason for me to ever replicate that. It just costs me money. But then WGBX, on the other hand, you can't get anywhere. So WGBX is in my app, and it's actually a stream I'm rebroadcasting. Uh, but yeah, and a couple of others, if there are stations and stuff like that which provide a stream, 100%, I will include it. And the fact that someone can scroll through it like the old TV guide, actually, I mean, I can see the stats and people, I think. I remember when I included, might have been Comet or something like that, which is just a stream online.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot of people are like, wow, what is the station I've never even heard of? Look, I can watch the X Files again. No, for the stations, it's only beneficial, right? It's just more viewers viewing their content, more ad
Nice.
viewers, etc. Yeah, absolutely. If there are streams and things, especially for very local information and stuff that people would find useful, I think that would be really good.
Yeah. Ro asks, do you manage this as well as have a full-time job? And if you have a full-time job, how do you balance that?
Yeah, I manage this, have a full-time job, and have kids. Um, let's see. Thankfully, this is not very time intensive. Once the app was written and the stuff was developed, it's not really intensive. I think my primary problem right now is to get backup people because every once in a while I disappear, whether I'm on vacation or one thing or the other. So this actually happened once, like where I was out of town and there was an outage, and I wasn't. I need to physically be there to like push a button. And I learned an important lesson of you know I can't be the sole person that operates this. So, I mean, I'm certainly seeking volunteers. I mean, if you're familiar with Linux or Kubernetes and stuff like that, to help out here, because again, the more people who can help administer the service, the better. Um, how do I balance it? Yeah, I think it's like not sleeping, sleep less. That's between work.
Less
As a parent, you
sleep,
already know
more
not to sleep much.
Monster
Yeah.
energy drinks.
Yeah, not
Uh,
particularly not much caffeine these days, but yeah, I think I probably would sleep more.
yeah. Chris asks, do you have any plans to expand to markets outside of Boston or open source it? I would just add onto that, has anyone sort of from other places approached you and asked like, hey, can I do this in, I don't know, like Houston or something like that?
Yeah, so I got to be careful with answering that question. So I'm not sure. As far as we're concerned right now, it's only in Boston.
Hmm.
That is the kind of thing I will go back to and ask lawyers about how to be very, very, very careful on the way money is used. This is how Locast got shut down, specifically
Hmm.
the way they use money from one area to another area and sort of commingling of assets there, or commingling of resources from one area to the other. Certainly, it is probably the most commonly requested thing. And there are people from multiple different major cities who have expressed interest in setting up a service. On my blog, I actually, while it's not, there's not a lot of reason to open source it because it's just scripts using open source software already. On the blog, I have just steps: install this software, go through, configure this, get this kind of hardware. Next step, okay, now you can set up, TV streaming. Here are the commands I use for FFmpeg to encode a channel. I mean, if you follow, I think there's like 3 blog posts that go into some detail about how it's all set up. If you did that, you would end up at V1 of this application from about a year ago. I think the only part that's not missing is the content caching, the way that I do that. But that's not, it's on my to-do list to finish that blog post. Part 4 is the final part that involves caching.
Yeah, makes sense. Another, I think question or thought that I would like to
Oh,
ask. Oh, you all right?
I appear to have unplugged my laptop and it's about to shut off. Give me a second. I'll get a
Oh,
power cable.
yeah. All the excitement of dancing on the edge of a volcano as we hope the laptop does not give up the
There we go.
ghost in the middle of the interview. I am glad we're able to
No,
solve that.
when I moved from one room to the other, I left my power cord in the other room.
Yeah, no, fair enough, fair enough. Any sort of if that asks any major FFmpeg epiphanies that you'd like to share from your experiences?
It is amazing. I can't believe it's free. It can nearly do anything. Um, I think the one interesting thing is its support of H.265 is very limited. In particular, it can't. So this is my current problem. It
Mhm.
can't encode an H.265 video into the fragmented MPEG format, which Apple requires, and also have encryption. So
Oof.
I have to like leave FFmpeg. Yeah, so I have to leave FFmpeg and use some other packager because right now it's just like FFmpeg. Here's my command. Here's my output, and here's HTTP live stream, and it's like one nice neat command that spits out everything really, really well, really fast. Also learning that any video application anywhere on the internet is just a wrapper for FFmpeg. As I like to, I mean, I'd be shocked if anybody's not using FFmpeg, and if they're not, I mean, what is wrong with them? Why are you reinventing the wheel? Yeah, it's actually a fantastic tool. Without that, this service would not exist.
Yeah. Do you have a sense of, folks could obviously just go, to like Best Buy or whatever and buy like an antenna or a box or some of those things. And so I'm curious if you have a sense from your community, like why are people preferring your solution to getting their own hardware?
The problem is most hardware sucks. It's usually junk, right? It's cheap. Um, it's ad riddled, or alternatively, it's cheap because there's a back end thing that's doing a metric and analyzing your screen or analyzing your video to see why, what and how you're watching stuff. Antenna would be really good. That's normally how I watch TV myself. However, they've gone through a couple of things called repacks and signal adjustments over the last few years, and that
Mhm.
antenna signal has gotten weaker and weaker and weaker. It's actually very hard to, like, for most people to pick up a decent signal. Like even
Ooh.
myself, I can only at home pick up two or three channels at best of the major channels. Um, that was part of my frustration. I live next to a hill. The antennas are in Needham on the other side of the hill, and unless I put something really giant outside my house, there's just no way to get it. Good luck if you live in an apartment. If you're like in the city in an apartment, uh, you're just not going to get anything. You might be lucky to get a channel here or there.
Oh boy, do you feel like is this sort of like a policy choice by the local TV broadcasters that they're maybe less interested in over the air folks versus folks that might subscribe on like their own streaming service or a cable package or something like that?
I don't know what the motivation for it is. Certainly I think that might be part of the motivation. I think the other element of it is some of the spectrum is reallocated to other use. So spectrum that used to be allocated for television has recently, in the last 10 years or so, been progressively more allocated for mobile data use, for example, for 5G.
Mhm.
So when they do these adjustments and they move spectrum around, like some of it is TV spectrum, and like the stations own it, they sell their spectrum or they give it back, and that gets allocated for cell use. So that's part of it. The other part, and interestingly enough, because the spectrums sometimes are next to each other, something most people don't know. If you don't get a good signal, there's a little device. It costs like maybe $10 most. It's called an LTE filter. You put
Mhm.
it on your TV antenna before you connect to the TV, and just like antenna, LTE filter to your TV, and that actually really dramatically improves signal. In Boston, it means that you'll probably get Fox again,
Oh
so that
wow.
happens to be right next to that frequency on so LTE frequency. Our Fox 25 is right there. So yeah, things like that. I think it's just a whole different variety of issues. I think most people have forgotten that television was free. Like I remember the 80s and the 90s, it was no big deal. You could just watch the game, right? You could whatever is on TV. Everybody could watch TV. And now it's like, oh no, you have to sign up for a streaming service. Monthly rate will go up, or something will happen, or which service do you have? But it should be free, which is so the goal here is go back to the way they used to be. Nothing
Yeah.
special. You download the app, you just start watching. Like there's no hoops you have to go through, no nag screens, nothing. It should just work.
Yeah, 100%. Matt Clark wants to ask, how'd you react if you had a sudden like 10 or 100x increase in users?
Uh, that would be fantastic. I think our service can handle it. So I have been focused immensely on scaling and ability to absorb scale. Uh, yeah, so right now, first version of it, the meltdown at 20. The next year for Thanksgiving, I was able to comfortably do 100.
Mhm.
And like now, I'll show you some graphs with the charts here with the way the CDN works. So um, the application itself doesn't really do much. It initiates the video stream and like maintains the encryption. So I guess it has its limits eventually, but it's no nothing is particularly taxed right now. So I haven't hit those limits. But the way the CDN works is whether I get 20 or 100 or 1,000 or multi-thousand. Right now, it only hits my service once per video.
Oh, wow.
So it'll be again. I can. This may actually be one where I'll pull up the slide for this because I actually have the presentation. Okay, here. So this is how caching. uh, this is how my caching in CDN works, and so the question is directly relevant to this. So I think this is from November. Oh, okay. So this is earlier in this month, right? So
Mhm.
and these spikes are football games. So this is probably Sunday, and this is probably Monday Night Football here. I think the ninth was probably Monday Night Football, and the other peak was probably smaller peak is probably Thursday Night Football, and the big peak after that is probably Sunday. But if you look at the green line underneath, and that's the uncached bandwidth, the line is
Mhm.
mostly flat, right? While the CDN will absorb the huge spikes, the actual hit on my service is very small. So yeah, I could, yeah, the green line would probably go up slightly more. if it was 10x, but I don't think that it would actually dramatically hurt the service in any way. My limits are what the CDN's limits are. The CDN has much, much bigger customers than me, so I'm not particularly concerned. I would like
Yeah.
to continue testing it. This is why I'm trying to continuously grow the user base. Uh, and if at all you ask why not expand, this is actually a very good reason not to expand, because I don't know what it'll do, right? And there are many other reasons, but there's a good technical reason not to expand beyond Boston because a sudden dramatic influx, while I believe it'll be fine, maybe something I don't anticipate will break.
Yeah, kind of as a follow-up to that, do you, think about or anticipate that, at some point this could be so, large user base wise that you might end up having to hire like support staff or, sort of more professionalize it? Or is the goal to sort of just keep it small enough that's like just wholly volunteers and you're just kind of paying small expenses and almost like trying to avoid getting too big?
Um, I don't know. I mean, it depends. I mean, if I were to make this sort of a national thing, yes, it would get very big very quickly. If we even were to expand to multiple cities, it would get very big very quickly. But there's always the push and pull of complete finances, right? Uh, and finances and the needs of the service. And 100, everybody's an unpaid volunteer. 100% of the donations, everything goes into funding the service. Like 100% goes into bandwidth or new hardware or whatever. I mean, at the moment, it doesn't need much, and the idea would try to keep it as lean as possible, as long as possible. But if it were ever to grow that big, then that's a bridge. It's a different bridge to cross, and decisions to be made in the future. For now, I mean, yeah, like the user base is by internet standards very small, right? 11,000 users is nothing special. There is what? How many people in Massachusetts? About 4 million in the state.
Yeah, I think
So
something like
okay, maybe
that.
that's like
Yeah.
an upper bound on that. Yeah. That's an upper bound on that, assuming everybody were to install it. And like it bleeds off to New Hampshire a little bit and Rhode Island a little bit. Yeah, maybe let's add another million for that, maybe 5 million users tops. Curious to see how it works if it ever gets that big. Um, yeah, my hope is that it doesn't need much. Like it's just something that runs in the background. Sometimes there are projects like that. Like I think famously SSL
Yeah.
was one of those projects. There's just somebody made it and it was running in the background and people didn't think much about it. I'd prefer
Very
it to be
good.
that rather than something large.
Yeah, you're not thinking that it's like, oh my God, like one day this could be like my whole career or something like that. It's really more like a giving back opportunity for the community in your mind.
Yeah, I mean, personally speaking, I mean, when I when I started doing my professional line of work, I was just making a free iOS application for fun. I wrote a Google Talk application, and that thing grew to such an extent it became what I do professionally now. Well, I don't do the Google Talk application anymore. I think that one is actually funded by the European Union. Like a bunch
Oh
of German
wow.
people took over it, and like it's funded by EU grants now. But like based on that, I did get hired to do something else, and went off and write what I write in my professional life. So it could be that, right? Like all these things are great experiences, and I certainly know a lot more about video encoding. And I knew stuff about scaling services and microservices and stuff like that, but um, personally speaking, it's in a way, it's like some people have home labs.
Oh
People like
yeah.
home labs and how these build this huge infrastructure, but it doesn't really do anything. Well, my home lab does something.
Yeah.
My home lab actually provides a service, so and I get to continue experimenting and learning, and I become a better developer professionally as well doing these things. Part of it feels like studying. Uh, the nature of our work is nothing is ever stagnant. Like the moment you're stagnant, you'll be out of job, and you have to always be learning. And this is just another opportunity to learn.
Yeah, so definitely a lot of scratching the itch. So Charlie was asking how you get the TV data. Did you have like a slide about the antenna and like that
Yeah,
process?
sure. Okay, so TV signal. Right. So I got a $10 tuner on eBay. There's an old school antenna on the roof, and the tuner plugs into Linux. Linux kernel detects the tuner automatically by default, loads up the kernel. You run the software called TV headend, and it spits out an MPEG-2 stream. That's it. Like it's
Oh,
there's nothing special about this. It is. You could all try it out.
how'd you pick out it was like the USB tuner, like one that like the Linux software package recommended or something like that?
I mean, Linux has support for nearly every common popular tuner. So I did double check the chip on the tuner, but more or less anything. I mean, there's granted the funny thing is they don't make these tuners anymore, so I'm just like trolling eBay and buying up inventory where I need it. Um, yeah, but eBay is full of them, like $20, $15. You can PCIe cards as well. Actually, I've been doing a lot more PCIe cards off eBay. Um, but yeah, there's nothing particularly special. It because TV already comes in as an MPEG-2 signal.
Mhm.
So one of the ways I like to explain what this service does is it takes an MPEG-2 signal that comes over the air and puts it in a format that your Wi-Fi antenna can receive. Like you're getting all these signals automatically. You just don't have a device that can receive it. I have the device that can receive it. I'm just converting it and retransmitting it in another format that your device can actually receive.
Ooh, cool. So, I think as we come to the bottom of the hour, what are I think some of the biggest lessons you've learned from this project over the past couple of years?
My assumptions about what you need to actually run something like this um, were way off. I thought that I needed a lot more. So I have a slide about this. So because to give you an idea of what this runs off of is okay. No, not geofencing, video streams. So, oh, well, this is what I'm building, right? So I have this, but like, and I don't have the slide. Here it is. Okay, this is an old Dell Optiplex. The little shiny thing in the back is the TV tuner connected to it with the antenna cable. That's it, right? You don't need a lot of fancy hardware. A lot of computer hardware plateaued a decade ago, like CPUs. GPUs are different, and I buy up GPUs like anything for encoding. But even then, like we don't need the latest and greatest. Even like this thing has a GPU, an Intel GPU from 2012, and that's perfectly fine for encoding H.264. So this box launched V1 of the application. I think it was something someone was throwing away. The Intel chip on it had a GPU. So if you ever use this application at the very beginning, the video wasn't great. It was a lot grainier, and but it was a hardware encoder. I could encode up to 8 streams on this thing. Once a stream is there, Apache serves it, and it's fine. It's like a static HTML pages. It didn't need much. This is still the server that serves the entire application, by the way.
Wow. Wow,
Um,
that
yeah,
is incredible. So, you're actually, are you using this and then like there's a cloud component as well? Or are you totally like home
yeah.
hosting
So
it with a static IP?
this is running like a commercial internet thing. Like, yes, it's yeah, there's a server with an regular, but more importantly, there's a CDN on the other end of it. So no one actually directly hits the server except for uh, hitting the REST endpoints, which happen very infrequently. I think once per login, right? Um, but beyond that, it's hitting the CDN. The CDN's hitting me. So yes, there could be 800 people watching the video, but I see it as one.
Yeah, and that's really neat. And are you? I guess how long do you think you'll sort of keep this running for? Are you just planning to do it indefinitely? Is there gonna one day you're gonna start looking to have like a Padawan or a successor of some sort? Is there a designated survivor if like an asteroid hits your house? Have you been thinking about, sort of any changes or continuity as this exists and
Yeah, we need
people
more. I
really
mean,
love it?
that's yes, absolutely need more people. Like when I started, I didn't think anyone would actually use it. It was a hey, this is something I find useful. You're welcome to use it as well, and it's grown way beyond that. Definitely need backup people. That is yeah, that is what we lack, and that is what we need. More people because I can't be the sole engineer. that's as explained once in the past. I was traveling, and I learned the importance of IP KVMs, which obviously, as you can see, this thing does not
Oh
have.
wow.
But but no, it has no KVM. It's like you have to go in and physically push the button. So like there was a power outage and it got stuck in a weird state and couldn't connect to the internet. Everything was on. Just had to reset the button, but I had no way to do that short of going to the basement that this is in and pushing the power button. So since then, I've acquired. I don't know if anybody knows what a jet KVM is. It's a pretty neat little device. You plug it into. It could make itself a KVM on any device because it sits in between the power button and itself. And so I have one of those, which I'm planning on installing and still continue running this service. But definitely, we need additional people to help support it. And yeah, that's probably. I mean, it will be good to be able to learn how to scale up to having more people. And if ever, the nonprofit exists independent of me legally and financially. I am just one employee of the nonprofit as a volunteer. So it has its own finances and stuff like that. So, if I were to stop doing this similar to other projects, it will continue living on. Someone else will just do it or other people will do it.
Cool, cool. Interesting question from Matt Clark. How are you approaching security of like your home router? Are you using, certain like reverse proxy tunneling? Or is there?
So this white box here is what I'm currently about to install. So funny thing is I buy enterprise hardware. Enterprise hardware is super cheap because this is a super micro server. So there's actually somebody
Mhm.
donated this for you, and that one U is also a donation. But this guy up here, this white box, is a Sophos internet firewall device. It's an enterprise, very, very expensive enterprise firewall. They go for $20 on eBay now because they're end of life. What's cool about it is you can take this and install something called pfSense or OPN Sense on it. It's a BSD-based router OS, and it turns it into a router with enterprise functionality. So I have, which is about what I'm about to roll out onto this, and so it has like intrusion detection systems, intrusion protection systems, which are pretty cool. I don't know if you're familiar with that. One is it blocks. I can have block traffic from like certain segments of the internet or other sketchy parts of the stuff. And the other is very interesting. Is it has sufficient RAM because it's an x86 machine with 4 gigs of RAM on a router, right? Running a pretty good Intel chip, and it takes a copy of everything that's going in memory, going across the wire onto WAN or even the LAN, and keeps it in memory and does an analysis of it based on certain hashes. Um, it's what enterprises use to look for malicious traffic. And so this is what I'm applying now. So I would recommend you try it out if you want to get your hands dirty. Pick up one of these Sophos routers. They are very cheap, and yeah, I've been, as I said, like everything is learning. So this is what I am currently learning what to do with. And I went down this rabbit hole recently of figuring out how to work with pfSense and or OPN Sense. They're sort of a same project. They forked each other. I would recommend you try it out. In particular, the way of managing. So I've isolated my network. So my KVM network is separate from my different. So each of the ports in the back, I can turn on or off remotely, and also I can have it assigned to different, completely physically separate LANs. The best I can do. If there is some kind of intrusion, I can limit it to only certain machines and not the entire stack. And then I also use Tailscale, which is a WireGuard application. So it allows me to establish secure links between different nodes. Uh, but that's less about intrusion detection, because I guess once you've breached Tailscale, you've gotten in. But the intrusion detection and protection is pretty good.
Nice. Yeah, so I think as we're kind of coming to the end, just any sorts of parting words, asks, like if people want to get connected, whether they want to be one of the helpers or if they want to learn more about this. What's kind of the what are the pitches that you got for everyone?
Um, I guess the blog that I have, I think is like my last name.org, so Pokharel.org, is an engineering blog, and I post fairly often. So if you're just interested in like understanding what's happening behind the scenes. I post there, and basically everything is open. The finance is open, the numbers are open as much as I can, and software stack, whatever I'm doing, I post up there. If you're just interested in like the technical background of things, if you want to help, reach out to me. Uh, let's talk, and we'll figure out if you can help with anything, whether it's helping me develop another client, working on the Android part of things, or anything else, right? Or just maintaining and running the server infrastructure. Um, like in this sense, it's not. I mean, the server stuff is not something I do professionally. I used to do it for fun. When I used to do it like decades ago, so I have some idea of how things work. But beyond that, I'm learning as I go. So certainly, advice is always welcome. Because I am certain there. I mean, as I said, I learned new things last week. I had no idea that enterprise router firewalls were a thing. Uh, yeah, advice. Advice is always welcome. And anybody who wants to help or join this project, again, always welcome.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us this evening. This was really great. It was great getting to know you better. Seems like there's a lot of folks definitely interested in the project. He kind of all the asks and advice. And of course, if you haven't downloaded it yet, download the app. I use it, I think, like every morning. I will throw on the news, mostly in the winter, to see if it's gonna, snow on me or something. So highly recommend that. And beyond that, I think Anu's been kind of inspirational in what he's accomplished in his spare time, and very much embodied the spirit of civic tech, which is why I wanted to bring him to this space. So thanks so much for sharing this with all of us, and hope we'll all chat again soon. Have a good one.
Thank you. And if you have any problems with the app, feel free to reach out on Reddit. Like we have the local TV Plus group if you're on Reddit, or just email. And also something I am doing is like trying to get this QR code and a flyer into libraries so that more people have access to this. And I will be posting more information on that. So, even if you're not technically inclined or know anything about this project, building awareness of it is probably the best thing you can do.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone.